Imagine a single unifying theory that attempts to explain literally everything. And I don't mean just, a vague philosophical concept. I mean a framework that claims to mechanically explain why a peony flower looks the way it does, how solar panels actually capture sunlight, and then, without skipping a beat, by the way, uses that exact same logic to explain the fundamental nature of good, evil, and the afterlife.
It honestly sounds like the setup to a science fiction novel,
Yeah.
because we usually we categorize those things into entirely different spheres of human knowledge.
Yeah, exactly.
Like biology goes in one box, engineering goes in another, and then philosophy and theology are off in their own separate corners.
Right. But the source material for our deep dive today completely obliterates those boxes. We are unpacking a highly ambitious, fiercely structured essay from 2006.
Oh, yeah. Very ambitious.
Yeah, it's titled Consciousness, Structure, and Energy Are the Three Elements of the Universe. And it was authored by Shefeng, with translation by Treasure and editing by Kyer, and the premise is right there in the title.
Right, in the title.
The author argues that everything in existence, from the device that you are listening to right now to your own soul, basically boils down to just three basic ingredients.
The trajectory of this text is really what makes it so captivating. I mean, it doesn't start up in the clouds.
No, not at all.
It begins by pointing at very simple, observable laws of physics and biology, and then it escalates surprisingly steeply into this rigid, cosmos-spanning spiritual belief system called Lifechanyuan.
Yeah, I found myself just marveling at the sheer audacity of it. It feels like a physicist's desperate search for a theory of everything, like string theory or quantum gravity.
Oh, right, right.
But instead of leaning on complex mathematics, the author builds this universal theory entirely on a spiritual and philosophical bedrock.
Yeah, and to understand how he builds that universe, we really have to start exactly where you and I and the listener are sitting right now, the tangible, visible world.
Okay, grounded reality.
Exactly. Before the text even touches on the invisible or the spiritual, it aggressively grounds us in the physical reality of structure.
So the argument is that without structure, there is no material. Like if you look around your room right now, the text claims that any visible object you see isn't really a thing in the traditional sense.
Right.
It is essentially just a physical structure that has geometrically trapped or combined with energy.
Because the universe is just teeming with invisible energy, right? But that energy is totally formless, totally chaotic, until it encounters a structure.
Oh.
And the crucial mechanism here, the engine of this entire worldview, really is that different structures absorb different energies.
Yeah, the examples the author uses really brought this down to earth for me. Like, think about the pyramids.
Oh, that's a great one.
The text argues the enduring wonder of the pyramids isn't about magic, It lies purely in their geometric structure, and you see it in basic agriculture, too.
Yeah, the crop rotation.
Right. Successful farmers don't plant the same crop in the exact same field year after year. They rotate them.
Because the soil contains different types of energies. Well, specifically nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Right.
And different structures, which in this case are the different species of plants, they require entirely different proportions of those energies to survive. So the farmer isn't changing the dirt, they're rotating the structures to maximize the energy already present in the land.
And it applies perfectly to human technology, too. Like, solar cookers and solar water heaters only function because their specific curved physical structures are designed to capture heat energy.
Yeah.
Vehicles are another brilliant example. A massive freight train, a heavy-duty semi-truck, and a small family sedan. They all carry completely different loads and perform different functions. Why? Primarily because the structures of their engines and chassis are fundamentally different.
We can even look at biology for this. Like, have you ever wondered why flies and bees are attracted to completely different food sources than, say, tigers and sheep?
I mean, I usually just think of it as evolution.
Sure, but the text argues it's not just an evolutionary preference. It's a pure manifestation of their differing physical and digestive structures. In this framework, structure is destiny. The form you take dictates the energy you consume.
While reading through those examples, an analogy popped into my head that really helped me visualize it. Let's imagine energy as electricity and structure as a household appliance.
Oh, I like where this is going. Let's test that out.
So think about it. The exact same raw electricity is flowing out of the socket in your wall. but that identical energy can either toast a bagel, freeze an ice cube, or power a flat-screen television.
Right, right.
The electricity itself isn't deciding what happens. The structure it flows into the toaster, the freezer, the TV absolutely dictates the outcome.
Exactly.
But, that raises a major question for me. If energy is so entirely passive, just waiting around to be used, doesn't that mean structure is the only thing that actually matters? Like, are we just dismissing energy as a background detail?
Well, you are tracking right alongside the author's underlying logic there. The text essentially confirms that energy is totally neutral.
Really?
Yeah, it compares energy to air or water. It's a medium, it's everywhere, and it has absolutely no moral compass or agenda.
So all this modern talk about finding good energy or avoiding bad energy is like completely backwards in this framework.
Precisely backwards. And the author uses a beautifully poetic line to explain this. He says, "Fragrant flowers attract butterflies."
Fragrant flowers attract butterflies.
Yeah, the argument is that you shouldn't waste your time obsessing over gathering, hunting, or directing energy. If you build the correct structure, the exact right energy will naturally, effortlessly flock to it.
So the toaster doesn't have to go hunting for electricity. It just has to be a perfectly built toaster, plug in, and the electricity does the rest.
And that leads us to the first major conceptual leap in the essay. Because if we accept that structure dictates how energy flows, the logical next question has to be, well, where do all these structures actually come from?
Right. If structure is the ultimate appliance, who is manufacturing the appliances?
Exactly. And the author asks us to look closely at human creations to answer that. Take the towering high-rise buildings in our major cities, or the beautiful clothing and complex makeup you see people wearing.
Yeah.
Or imagine walking into a massive supermarket, confronted with this overwhelming feast of thousands of different food products. Who created all of that?
I mean, the obvious practical answer is people. Human beings poured the concrete, stitched the fabrics, and stocked the shelves.
Right, but the text challenges that obvious answer.
Yeah.
It concedes that people were involved, yes.
Yeah.
But was it their hands and feet that actually created those things?
So the author argues it wasn't the physical limbs at all, it was human consciousness.
Yeah.
The text states that without consciousness giving the marching orders, hands and feet are utterly useless. They would just flail around and accomplish nothing. Therefore, every single structure you see, the skyscraper, the dress, the supermarket, is entirely a product of consciousness.
The mind is the origin point of the physical world.
Okay, I have to push back on this. Because attributing an entire fully stocked supermarket solely to consciousness feels like it's glossing over a whole lot of very exhausting physical labor.
Yeah.
Someone's back is aching from carrying those bricks. Isn't saying consciousness built this skyscraper. Just a very grand philosophical way of saying ideas have consequences.
From a purely pragmatic standpoint, you're absolutely right to highlight the physical toll. But we have to dig into the text's deeper philosophical hierarchy to understand how the author justifies this.
Okay, lay it on me.
This isn't just about giving the architect more credit than the bricklayer. The text argues that consciousness, structure, and energy are the only eternal elements in the universe.
Wait, meaning everything else is temporary?
More than temporary. The physical effort, the sore muscles, the concrete itself. The author describes all of that as illusory, showy, and impermanent.
How can a concrete skyscraper be an illusion?
Because the concrete is just matter, and matter is just neutral energy temporarily trapped in a specific shape. The only thing that initiated that specific shape, that brought it out of the chaos, was the consciousness that conceptualized it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, without the mind, the concrete eventually just crumbles back into dust. The physical structure is just a fleeting byproduct. In fact, the text takes it a step further. Because consciousness dictates structure, the author argues we actually don't even need to emphasize structures too much anymore.
Wait, hold on. We just spent all this time establishing that structure is the key to everything. The toaster analogy, the crop rotation, the geometric destiny.
I know, it feels like a contradiction. But the text is escalating. It argues that the consciousness we possess automatically decides the structure we get.
Automatically?
Yeah. If we go back to your analogy, if energy is the electricity and structure is the toaster, consciousness is the engineer who drafted the blueprints.
I see. So if you have the mind of an engineer, the toaster is an inevitable result.
Exactly. The text claims what kind of consciousness we have decides the kind of corresponding structure that we will have. The one true source of everything is consciousness.
So we've gone from the observable reality of why bees like flowers and why we rotate crops to the realization that structure controls energy and now to the realization that consciousness controls structure.
And now, the text takes the ultimate leap. It scales this logic up from human consciousness to the entire cosmos.
Okay, we need to pause here for a second because this is where the essay accelerates from gentle observations about gardening straight into an intense zero-sum religious ultimatum.
It really does.
And I want to make it super clear to you listening that while we are here to map out the fascinating architecture of this author's argument, we aren't taking sides or endorsing this worldview. We were just impartially exploring how he builds this universe.
Right.
But you have to admit, the audacity of the claim we are about to discuss is just staggering.
It is a massive pivot. The author asks a simple question. If human consciousness builds human structures, like supermarkets and cars, what consciousness built the actual planet those things sit on?
Right.
The text looks at the infinite variety of life structures in the universe, the thousands of biological postures, the infinite material forms, and argues this staggering variety implies a universal consciousness.
So the universe isn't random, it has a mind.
Yes, and the author definitively names this universal consciousness, the greatest creator or God.
That is a breathtaking jump. We literally just went from solar cookers straight to God.
We did.
Hmm.
And for the author, finding this core consciousness, the greatest creator, is the ultimate solution to the human condition. The text claims that once you locate this headstream, the complex universe becomes incredibly simple.
Oh, I see.
Darkness turns into light, misery morphs into joy. It provides an absolute anchor for the entire theory.
And it introduces the core tenets of the Lifechanyuan belief system. The absolute touchstones of this entire philosophy boil down to two commands: revere the greatest creator and take the way of the greatest creator.
And this is where the text becomes very uncompromising. These aren't gentle suggestions for a happy life, This acts as an absolute touchstone for morality.
Right.
The text states unequivocally that anyone, any theory, any state, political party, religion, or group that goes against this specific path is evil and ugly.
Yeah, the velocity of the rhetoric is wild. The author describes anyone who dissents from this path as superfluous tumors growing on the body of humanity.
Humors. Yeah.
And the text says they will be eliminated. It doesn't matter how dazzling their philosophical theories are, or how many millions of followers they have, or how inscrutable their magical powers might be if they don't revere the greatest creator. They are a tumor. I mean, how on earth does the author justify such a black and white apocalyptic stance?
Well, you have to look at how the internal logic holds up, even as the rhetoric becomes so extreme. Within this specific framework, the text demands that all religions and human thoughts must be unified into one. It's a form of strict monism. Everything is one thing.
But why are dissenters called tumors? Why not just call them, I don't know, misguided?
Because of the mechanics of structure we established earlier, if you genuinely believe you have found the literal mechanical headstream of the universe, the actual consciousness that structures all of reality, then a different opinion isn't just a polite disagreement.
Oh, it's a mechanical failure.
Exactly. Remember, bad structure attracts bad energy. In this cosmic view, a dissenting philosophy or competing religion is a malformed structure. It is a rogue gear in the watch, a tumor.
Wow.
It actively disrupts the perfect flow of universal energy.
Wow.
For the universe to function harmoniously, all structures must perfectly align with the singular consciousness of the greatest creator.
When you trace the logic all the way back to the crop rotation and the solar panels, it is an incredibly robust, closed loop of logic, even if the conclusion is staggeringly absolute.
Yeah, the architecture of the argument is completely airtight, assuming you buy into the initial premise. Which brings us to the ultimate endgame of the text.
Right.
Having established this universal touchstone of good and evil, the essay reveals what actually happens to individual lives based on their alignment with this consciousness.
So the author defines the consciousness of the greatest creator as non-material. It's described as running through all tangible and intangible time and space. It exists in both the positive and negative universes, and the author refers to this flowing manifestation as the Tao.
And this state of consciousness, the Tao, is the ultimate differentiator of all life. The text explicitly lists out the hierarchy of existence. It is the only thing that separates ignorant people, mortals, ladies, and sages on the positive side,
Wait for it.
from goblins, demons, devils, ghosts, and monsters on the negative side.
Goblins and monsters. The vocabulary shifts are just so striking. But fundamentally, your internal state of consciousness determines whether you end up categorized as a sage or a goblin.
Because your consciousness dictates your structure. A sage has built one type of mental and spiritual structure.
Yeah.
A demon has built a completely different malformed structure.
Right.
And the way to ensure you get the right structure is by focusing solely on revering the greatest creator. The text claims that if you grasp this one key link, everything else falls into its proper place. You get twice the results with half the effort.
That goes right back to the fragrant flowers and the butterflies.
Yes.
You aren't fighting the energy anymore. You aren't exhausting yourself. You've aligned your consciousness, which builds the right structure, and the energy just flows to you.
You're connecting the dots perfectly. The ultimate goal of this effortless flow is to accomplish a spiritual state of immortality. The text says the aim is to attain a life structure in a higher level space and to reach the ideal other shore.
Immortality in a higher dimensional space. It is quite the promised land. But I have to bring up the very last sentence of this text because it threw me an absolute curveball.
Oh, the conclusion is certainly unexpected.
After taking us on this sweeping journey, from the physical geometry of flowers to the metaphysical sorting of sages and demons, the author confidently ends by stating that all government officials, industrial and religious leaders, and company bosses already understand these principles very well.
Yeah, it's a fascinating, almost jarring way to end. It completely reframes the essay.
I read that and thought, wait, is this author saying the CEO of my company already knows how to align his consciousness with the Tao to avoid becoming a goblin? It almost sounds like a grand conspiracy theory.
It reveals how the author views worldly power, really. If we unpack this bold conclusion, it suggests that the author believes the universe operates on a hidden, highly mechanical set of spiritual rules. The rules of consciousness, structure, and energy.
And the implication is that the global elite, the people running the massive governments and multinational corporations, haven't gotten there by accident or just by working hard.
Right. The author implies they've intuitively or explicitly figured out this cosmic cheat code. They know how to structure their consciousness to naturally attract the energy of success, wealth, and influence.
So the essay isn't just a religious manifesto. The author is offering you, the reader, the exact same cosmic cheat code that billionaires and presidents supposedly use behind closed doors.
Yeah, it's an attempted democratization of universal power, but it's framed within a very strict, uncompromising spiritual hierarchy.
Well, let's take a breath and zoom out, because this text took us on a truly wild intellectual journey today.
It really did.
We started out looking at the foundational trinity: consciousness, structure, and energy. We learned how physical structures like a peony flower or a solar cooker are the things that actually attract and capture neutral energy.
Then, we followed the logic as it scaled that concept all the way up to a universal consciousness, the greatest creator who acts as the ultimate architect of reality.
And finally, we saw how aligning with that consciousness is proposed as a cosmic sorting mechanism. It's a system designed to save us from becoming goblins, grant us the cheat codes of the global elite, and set us on a quest for higher dimensional immortality.
It is a lot to process. But even if you entirely set aside the text's intense religious ultimatums and the apocalyptic rhetoric about tumors, the foundational premise here offers a genuinely fascinating lens for self-reflection.
So how would you apply it practically?
Think about the core argument.
Yeah.
Your external structures are just a physical manifestation of your internal consciousness. Try applying that to yourself right now.
Okay.
Look at the structures in your own life. Look at your daily habits, the way your physical workspace is organized, the dynamics of your personal relationships.
The appliances I've built and plugged in, so to speak.
Exactly. If the author is right, those physical and social structures didn't just happen to you by accident. They were drafted and built by your underlying state of consciousness. So what do the structures of your life right now reveal about your current state of mind?
That is a very confronting but incredibly useful way to look at the world. It forces you to take profound responsibility for your environment. It completely removes the excuse of just having bad luck or being surrounded by bad energy.
You are the engineer of your own reality.
Which brings me to a final thought I want to leave you, the listener, to mull over today. It builds right on what we were just discussing, specifically that beautiful quote from the text. Fragrant flowers attract butterflies. The text argues that energy is entirely neutral. It's just air or water floating around, waiting for a structure to inhabit. But so often in our modern lives, especially in this hustle culture we live in, we aggressively try to generate energy. We try to force ourselves to find motivation or willpower, or we hunt for the right vibes to get through the workday. We exhaust ourselves running around with a net, chasing the butterflies. But what if you stop trying to force the energy? What if you focused purely on being the engineer? If you just built a better routine, a better physical environment, a more resilient mindset, would the motivation and the right energy naturally flock to you completely effortlessly? Look closely at your life today and ask yourself, what kind of butterflies are your current structures attracting?
A fantastic question to leave off on. Form dictates function.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the source material. It's been a truly expansive journey.
It has been a pleasure. Keep questioning the structures around you.
Until next time, take care.